A Rapid Diorama by Charles Dickens. A noble mountain pass, with the ruins of a fort on a strong eminence, traditionally called the Fort of Fra Diavolo. The old town of Itri, like a device in pastry, built up almost perpendicularly on a hill and approached by long, steep flights of steps. Beautiful Mola di Gaeta, whose wines, like those of Albano, have degenerated since the days of Horace, or his taste for wine was bad, which is not likely of one who enjoyed it so much and extolled it so well. Another night upon the road at St. Agatha. A rest next day at Capua, which is picturesque, but hardly so seductive to a traveler now as the soldiers of Praetorian Rome were wont to find the ancient city of that name. A flat road among vines festooned and looped from tree to tree, and Mount Vesuvius close at hand at last, its cone and summit whitened with snow, and its smoke hanging over it in the heavy atmosphere of the day like a dense cloud. So we go, rattling downhill into Naples. Capri, once made odious by the deified beast Tiberius, Ischia, Procida, and the thousand distant beauties of the bay, lie in the blue sea yonder, changing in the mist and sunshine 20 times a day, now close at hand, now far off, now unseen. The fairest country in the world is spread about us. Whether we turn towards the Miseno shore of the splendid watery amphitheater, and go by the grotto of Posillipo to the Grotto del Cane, and away to Baiae, or take the other way towards Vesuvius and Sorrento, it is one succession of delights. In the last-named direction, where, over doors and archways, there are countless little images of San Gennaro, with his Canute's hand stretched out to check the fury of the burning mountain. We are carried pleasantly by a railroad on the beautiful sea beach, past the town of Torre del Greco, built upon the ashes of the former town, destroyed by an eruption of Vesuvius within 100 years, and past the flat-roofed houses, granaries, and macaroni manufactories. To Castellamare, with its ruined castle, now inhabited by fishermen, standing in the sea upon a heap of rocks. Here the railroad terminates, but hence we may ride on, by an unbroken succession of enchanting bays and beautiful scenery, sloping from the highest summit of St. Angelo, the highest neighboring mountain, down to the water's edge among vineyards, olive trees, gardens of oranges and lemons, orchards, heaped-up rocks, green gorges in the hills and by the bases of snow-covered heights, and through small towns with handsome, dark-haired women at the doors, and past delicious summer villas to Sorrento, where the poet Tasso drew his inspiration from the beauty surrounding him. Returning, we may climb the heights above Castellamare, and looking down among the boughs and leaves, see the crisp water glistening in the sun, and clusters of white houses in distant Naples, dwindling in the great extent of prospect down to Dice. The coming back to the city, by the beach again at sunset, with the glowing sea on one side, and the darkening mountain with its smoke and flame upon the other, is a sublime conclusion to the glory of the day. Stand at the bottom of the great marketplace of Pompeii, and look up the silent streets, through the ruined temples of Jupiter and Isis, over the broken houses with their inmost sanctuaries open to the day, away to Mount Vesuvius, bright and snowy in the peaceful distance, and lose all count of time and heed of other things in the strange and melancholy sensation of seeing the destroyed and the destroyer making this quiet picture in the sun. Then ramble on and see at every turn the little familiar tokens of human habitation and everyday pursuits, the chafing of the bucket rope in the stone rim of the exhausted well, the track of carriage wheels in the pavement of the street, the marks of drinking vessels on the stone counter of the wine shop, the amphorae in private cellars stored away so many hundred years ago, and undisturbed to this hour, all rendering the solitude and deadly lonesomeness of the place 10,000 times more solemn than if the volcano in its fury had swept the city from the earth and sunk it in the bottom of the sea. After it was shaken by the earthquake which preceded the eruption, workmen were employed in shaping out, in stone, new ornaments for temples and other buildings that had suffered. Here lies their work, outside the city gate, as if they would return tomorrow. In the cellar of Diomedes' house, where certain skeletons were found huddled together close to the door, the impression of their bodies on the ashes hardened with the ashes and became stamped and fixed there after they had shrunk inside to scanty bones. So, in the theater of Herculaneum, a comic mask, floating on the stream when it was hot and liquid, stamped its mimic features in it as it hardened into stone, and now it turns upon the stranger the fantastic look it turned upon the audiences in that same theater 2,000 years ago. Next to the wonder of going up and down the streets, and in and out of the houses, and traversing the secret chambers of the temples, of a religion that has vanished from the earth, and finding so many fresh traces of remote antiquity, as if the course of time had been stopped after this desolation, and there had been no nights and days, months, years, and centuries since. Nothing is more impressive and terrible than the many evidences of the searching nature of the ashes, as bespeaking their irresistible power and the impossibility of escaping them. In the wine cellars they forced their way into the earthen vessels, displacing the wine and choking them to the brim with dust. In the tombs they forced the ashes of the dead from the funeral urns and rained new ruin even into them. The mouths and eyes and skulls of all the skeletons were stuffed with this terrible hail. In Herculaneum, where the flood was of a different and a heavier kind, it rolled in like a sea. Imagine a deluge of water turned to marble at its height, and that is what is called the lava here. Some workmen were digging the gloomy well on the brink of which we now stand, looking down, when they came on some of the stone benches of the theater, those steps, for such they seem, at the bottom of the excavation, and found the buried city of Herculaneum. Presently going down, with lighted torches, we are perplexed by great walls of monstrous thickness, rising up between the benches, shutting out the stage, obtruding their shapeless forms in absurd places, confusing the whole plan and making it a disordered dream. We cannot at first believe or picture to ourselves that this came rolling in and drowned the city, and that all that is not here has been cut away by the axe like solid stone. But this, perceived and understood, the horror and oppression of its presence are indescribable. Many of the paintings on the walls in the roofless chambers of both cities, or carefully removed to the museum at Naples, are as fresh and plain as if they had been executed yesterday. Here are subjects of still life, as provisions, dead game, bottles, glasses, and the like, familiar classical stories or mythological fables, always forcibly and plainly told, conceits of cupids, quarreling, sporting, working at trades, theatrical rehearsals, poets reading their productions to their friends, inscriptions chalked upon the walls, political squibs, advertisements, rough drawings by schoolboys, everything to people and restore the ancient cities in the fancy of their wondering visitor. Furniture, too, you see, of every kind, lamps, tables, couches, vessels for eating, drinking, and cooking, workmen's tools, surgical instruments, tickets for the theater, pieces of money, personal ornaments, bunches of keys found clinched in the grasp of skeletons, helmets of guards and warriors, little household bells, yet musical with their old domestic tones. The least among these objects lends its aid to swell the interest of Vesuvius and invest it with a perfect fascination. The looking from either ruined city into the neighboring grounds overgrown with beautiful vines and luxuriant trees, and remembering that house upon house, temple on temple, building after building, and street after street, are still lying underneath the roots of all the quiet cultivation, waiting to be turned up to the light of day, is something so wonderful, so full of mystery, so captivating to the imagination, that one would think it would be paramount and yield to nothing else, to nothing but Vesuvius. But the mountain is the genius of the scene. From every indication of the ruin it has worked, we look again with an absorbing interest to where its smoke is rising up into the sky. It is beyond us as we thread the ruined streets, above us as we stand upon the ruined walls. We follow it through every vista of broken columns as we wander through the empty courtyards of the houses, and through the garlandings and interlacings of every wanton vine, turning away to Paestum yonder, to see the awful structures built, the least aged of them hundreds of years before the birth of Christ, and standing yet erect in lonely majesty upon the wild malaria-blighted plain. We watch Vesuvius as it disappears from the prospect, and watch for it again on our return, with the same thrill of interest, as the doom and destiny of all this beautiful country biding its terrible time. It is very warm in the sun on this early spring day when we return from Paestum, but very cold in the shade, insomuch that although we may lunch pleasantly at noon in the open air by the gate of Pompeii, the neighboring rivulet supplies thick ice for our wine. But the sun is shining brightly. There is not a cloud or speck of vapor in the whole blue sky, looking down upon the Bay of Naples, and the moon will be at the full tonight. No matter that the snow and ice lie thick upon the summit of Vesuvius, or that we have been on foot all day at Pompeii, or that croakers maintain that strangers should not be on the mountain by night in such an unusual season. Let us take advantage of the fine weather, make the best of our way to Resina, the little village at the foot of the mountain, prepare ourselves as well as we can on so short a notice at the guide's house, ascend at once, and have sunset halfway up, moonlight at the top, and midnight to come down in. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon there is a terrible uproar in the little stable yard of Signore Salvatore, the recognized head guide, with the gold band around his cap, and 30 under-guides, who are all scuffling and screaming at once, are preparing half a dozen saddled ponies, 3 litters, and some stout staves for the journey. Every one of the 30 quarrels with the other 29 and frightens the 6 ponies, and as much of the village as can possibly squeeze itself into the little stable yard participates in the tumult and gets trodden on by the cattle. After much violent skirmishing, and more noise than would suffice for the storming of Naples, the procession starts. The head guide, who is liberally paid for all the attendance, rides a little in advance of the party. The other 30 guides proceed on foot. 8 go forward with the litters that are to be used by and by, and the remaining 22 beg. We ascend gradually, by stony lanes like rough, broad flights of stairs, for some time, At length we leave these and the vineyards on either side of them, and emerge upon a bleak, bare region where the lava lies confusedly in enormous rusty masses, as if the earth had been plowed up by burning thunderbolts. And now we halt to see the sun set. The change that falls upon the dreary region, and on the whole mountain, as its red light fades and the night comes on, and the unutterable solemnity and dreariness that reign around. Who that has witnessed it can ever forget? It is dark when, after winding for some time over the broken ground, we arrive at the foot of the cone, which is extremely steep and seems to rise almost perpendicularly from the spot where we dismount. The only light is reflected from the snow, deep, hard, and white, with which the cone is covered. It is now intensely cold, and the air is piercing. The 31 have brought no torches, knowing that the moon will rise before we reach the top. 2 of the litters are devoted to the 2 ladies. The third to a rather heavy gentleman from Naples, whose hospitality and good nature have attached him to the expedition and determined him to assist in doing the honors of the mountain. The rather heavy gentleman is carried by 15 men, each of the ladies by half a dozen. We who walk make the best use of our staves, and so the whole party begin to labor upward over the snow, as if they were toiling to the summit of an antediluvian 12th cake. We are a long time toiling up, and the head guide looks oddly about him when one of the company, not an Italian, though an habitué of the mountain for many years, whom we will call, for our present purpose, Mr. Pickle of Portici, suggests that, as it is freezing hard, and the usual footing of ashes is covered by the snow and ice, it will surely be difficult to descend. But the sight of the litters above, tilting up and down and jerking from this side to that, as the bearers continually slip and tumble, diverts our attention. More especially as the whole length of the rather heavy gentleman is, at that moment, presented to us alarmingly foreshortened, with his head downward. The rising of the moon soon afterward revives the flagging spirits of the bearers, stimulating each other with their usual watchword, "Courage, friend, it is to eat macaroni." They press on gallantly for the summit. From tinging the top of the snow above us with a band of light and pouring it in a stream through the valley below, while we have been ascending in the dark, the moon soon lights the whole white mountainside, and the broad sea down below, and tiny Naples in the distance, and every village in the country round. The whole prospect is in this lovely state, when we come upon the platform on the mountaintop, the region of fire, an exhausted crater formed of great masses of gigantic cinders, like blocks of stone from some tremendous waterfall, burned up, from every chink and crevice of which hot, sulphurous smoke is pouring out, while from another conical-shaped hill, the present crater, rising abruptly from this platform at the end, great sheets of fire are streaming forth, reddening the night with flame, blackening it with smoke, and spotting it with red-hot stones and cinders that fly up into the air like feathers and fall down like lead. What words can paint the gloom and grandeur of this scene? The broken ground, the smoke, the sense of suffocation from the sulphur, the fear of falling down through the crevices in the yawning ground, the stopping every now and then for somebody who is missing in the dark, for the dense smoke now obscures the moon, the intolerable noise of the 30, and the hoarse roaring of the mountain, make it a scene of such confusion, at the same time, that we reel again. But dragging the ladies through it, and across another exhausted crater to the foot of the present volcano, we approach close to it on the windy side, and then sit down among the hot ashes at its foot, and look up in silence, faintly estimating the action that is going on within, from its being full 100 feet higher at this minute than it was 6 weeks ago. There is something in the fire and roar that generates an irresistible desire to get nearer to it. We cannot rest long without starting off. 2 of us, on our hands and knees, accompanied by the head guide, to climb to the brim of the flaming crater and try to look in. Meanwhile, the 30 yell, as with one voice, that it is a dangerous proceeding, and call to us to come back, frightening the rest of the party out of their wits. What with their noise, and what with the trembling of the thin crust of ground that seems about to open underneath our feet, and to plunge us into the burning gulf below, which is the real danger, if there be any. And what with the flashing of the fire in our faces, and the shower of red-hot ashes that is raining down, and the choking smoke and sulfur, we may well feel giddy and irrational, like drunken men. But we contrive to climb up to the brim, and look down for a moment into the hell of boiling fire below. Then we all 3 come rolling down, blackened and singed and scorched and hot and giddy, and each with his dress alight in 6 places. You have read 1,000 times that the usual way of descending is by sliding down the ashes, which, forming a gradually increasing ledge below the feet, prevent too rapid a descent. But when we have crossed the 2 exhausted craters on our way back, and are come to this precipitous place, there is, as Mr. Pickle has foretold, no vestige of ashes to be seen, the whole being a smooth sheet of ice. In this dilemma, 10 or a dozen of the guides cautiously join hands and make a chain of men, of whom the foremost beat, as well as they can, a rough track with their sticks, down which we prepare to follow, the way being fearfully steep, and none of the party, even of the 30, being able to keep their feet for 6 paces together. The ladies are taken out of their litters and placed, each between 2 careful persons, while others of the 30 hold by their skirts, to prevent their falling forward, a necessary precaution tending to the immediate and hopeless dilapidation of their apparel. The rather heavy gentleman is adjured to leave his litter too, and be escorted in a similar manner. But he resolves to be brought down as he was brought up, on the principle that his 15 bearers are not likely to tumble all at once, and that he is safer so than trusting to his own legs. In this order we begin the descent, sometimes on foot, sometimes shuffling on the ice, always proceeding much more quietly and slowly than on our upward way, and constantly alarmed by the falling among us of somebody from behind, who endangers the footing of the whole party and clings pertinaciously to anybody's ankles. It is impossible for the litter to be in advance, too, as the track has to be made, and its appearance behind us overhead, with someone or other of the bearers always down, and the rather heavy gentleman with his legs in the air, is very threatening and frightful. We have gone on thus a very little way, painfully and anxiously, but quite merrily, and regarding it as a great success, and have all fallen several times, and have all been stopped, somehow or other, as we were sliding away, when Mr. Pickle of Portici, in the act of remarking on these uncommon circumstances, as quite beyond his experience, stumbles, falls, disengages himself with quick presence of mind from those about him, plunges away head foremost, and rolls over and over down the whole surface of the cone. Sickening as it is to look and be so powerless to help him, I see him there. In the moonlight, I have had such a dream often, skimming over the white ice like a cannonball. Almost at the same moment there is a cry from behind, and a man who has carried a light basket of spare cloaks on his head comes rolling past at the same frightful speed, closely followed by a boy. At this climax of the chapter of accidents, the remaining 8 and 20 vociferate to that degree that a pack of wolves would be music to them. Giddy and bloody and a mere bundle of rags is Pickle of Portici when we reach the place where we dismounted and where the horses are waiting. But thank God, sound in limb, and never are we likely to be more glad to see a man alive and on his feet than to see him now, making light of it too, though sorely bruised and in great pain. The boy is brought into the hermitage on the mountain, while we are at supper, with his head tied up, and the man is heard of some hours afterwards. He too is bruised and stunned, but has broken no bones, the snow having, fortunately, covered all the larger blocks of rock and stone and rendered them harmless. After a cheerful meal and a good rest before a blazing fire, we again take horse and continue our descent to Salvatore's house, very slowly, by reason of our bruised friend being hardly able to keep the saddle or endure the pain of motion. Though it is so late at night or early in the morning, all the people of the village are waiting about the little stable yard when we arrive and looking up the road by which we are expected. Our appearance is hailed with a great clamor of tongues and a general sensation, for which, in our modesty, we are somewhat at a loss to account, until turning into the yard we find that one of a party of French gentlemen, who were on the mountain at the same time, is lying on some straw in the stable with a broken limb, looking like death and suffering great torture, and that we were confidently supposed to have encountered some worse accident. So, well returned, and heaven be praised, as the cheerful Vetturino who has borne us company all the way from Pisa says with all his heart, and away with his ready horses into sleeping Naples, it wakes again to Polichinelli and pickpockets, buffo singers and beggars, rags, puppets, flowers, brightness, dirt, and universal degradation, airing its harlequin suit in the sunshine, next day and every day, singing, starving, dancing, gaming on the seashore, and leaving all labor to the burning mountain, which is ever at its work.